Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show with SportsbookReview.com. I'm your host, Lee Martin, here to talk some UFC. We're back at Yas Island again this weekend for Holm versus Irene Aldana. And joining me today, I have SBR's UFC expert, David Manyun, and MMA Mania's lead host, Matt Ryan. Before we get into any UFC talk and the main card breakdown for this weekend, go ahead, give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. That way you never miss a show. Now let's jump to it. Like always, I hope you guys are having a wonderful week so far. And before we get into this weekend's fight, I just want to go back, rewind to last weekend, and see how your guys' weekend went. We had UFC 253 with Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa. And Dave, I'm going to start with you and let us know how your weekend went.
In terms of overall predictions, it was a beautiful time going through the preliminaries, the early prelims, a prelims card. I went 6-0. And I felt confident going into the main card. And then, boom, everything turned around on me. And we had some results I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting Brandon Royval to perform so well. Incredible. Caitlin Vieira, she did the work. Hakeem Dawodu, he defeated Tukagov. I didn't expect that. So my 6-0 quickly turned around. And then we got into the title fight. And Jan Blachowicz knocked out Dominic Reyes, which was, I think, it was a shock to me because I did not think he was going to become the first person to knock out Reyes. But all the best to him. An incredible performance. And then obviously the main event, Israel. I did say take the over, and it didn't quite work out with the over. But I was a backer of Israel in that fight, and heading towards fight night, I was all over Stylebender, and he put on an incredible performance. Not best pleased with the antics after the fight. I think the sportsmanship could have been, there at all, but it wasn't. It was a bit disrespectful. I know there was crap spoken between both the guys heading up to the fight, but that's what you do to Southfight. Out in such an emphatic fashion, you should just shake the man's hand and get over it. And you're the better man. You proved that, but he didn't. But it's whatever. He's still young, still growing. I just can't wait for his next fight. But yeah, it was a great event. In terms of betting, I ended up down 1 unit because I slapped a little bet on at the end on Israel inside the distance, which helped me. So yeah.
Yeah, Paulo Costa is already out saying he wants a rematch with Adesanya, so let's see what happens there. Yeah.
This is a path that Costa should not want to go down, in my opinion. Reset, Israel's experience, especially in terms of striking, is light years ahead of Paulo Costa. Yeah. He needs to work on some stuff. And maybe either a weight class change or just a different direction for right now, because that performance from Israel, unless Costa can win his next 3 fights in such a dominating fashion and knock out some high level opponents, then he's not going to get a look in on this title for a while. There's too many killers in this middleweight division now.
Yeah, he seemed pretty angry after that fight, but. Well, Matt, I want to hear about how your weekend went. So how did your Saturday go?
I drank an entire bottle of whiskey, so that will be an indicator of how the night started and ended. So we did our Combat Culture broadcast last Saturday night, and if you watched along with us the entire night, you know that the first 2 fights, we weren't having a lot of fun with them. They were technically sound fights, but they were not what you wanted to see on a main card of a pay-per-view with 2 title fights. But then we got to Cara France and Brandon Royval, and then we started to feel like the money we spent on the pay-per-view and the time people are spending on the pay-per-view was beginning to be worth it. And then Jan Blachowicz, with probably one of the most beautiful knockouts I've ever seen. The way he was able to just open up Reyes and just set him up for the finish. He deserves that 205-pound title. And on the show last week, Dave and I believe you, Lee, agreed that Dominic Reyes was, in a sense, the uncrowned light heavyweight champion. So you can't take anything away from Blachowicz. You can't dispute his victory. You can't dispute anything with him and how he won the title. He is the undisputed 205-pound champion. And then going back to Israel Adesanya's antics, if we go back to the start of 2020 and we talk about the Yoel Romero Israel Adesanya fight and how Paulo Costa was trying to steal Adesanya's spotlight after an unimpressive performance, but Costa trying basically to stunt or set up and shoot an angle in wrestling terms with Adesanya. And the entire time, the lack of respect either fighter showed one another. And we rarely see Adesanya that outwardly disrespectful after a fight, but after everything that those two said to each other, the fact that it was just the old Counter-Strike or Halo revenge and something not a little more drastic is a little better than what we could have expected. But Adesanya, again, putting on a beautiful performance. I believe I called it inside the distance. I didn't think it would be that rapidly. But Costa just did not look ready for prime time. And the fact that he's calling for an immediate rematch is laughable.
Yeah. No, I don't know if you guys saw the video, but it's like a video of Paulo Costa, like this close to his face, and he's just like so angry. But yeah, so he wants that rematch ASAP. But now, it's a new week, October 3rd, Abu Dhabi. We have Holm versus Irene Aldana. Let's get into that entire main card breakdown. So first up, we have middleweight, Dequan Townsend versus Dusko Todorovic. Via Bet Online, Todorovic is minus 310 and Townsend is plus 260. Dave, I'm going to start off with you if you can give us your breakdown and pick for that fight.
Yeah, in a different time, when there isn't a pandemic and Dana White is hosting events every single week, we would not be watching Dequan Townsend fight this weekend. That's a fact. 3 fight losing skid, 34 years of age. And not only did he lose them 3 fights, he lost every single round. He didn't get a look in. He hasn't had a look in. He's very strong and he is powerful. And he's always going to pose that threat of a knockout. Okay. But the guy he's fighting against in Dusko Todorovic, it's a tough one. Now, yes, he is making his UFC debut, but it's different for the guys that are stemming from the Dana White Contender Series reality TV show. Look, they come from there. They've had the bright lights. They've been on cameras. They've felt that pressure. We have no crowd in the attending these events anymore. So for me, when I'm looking at skills and I'm putting these two against each other, Dusko is better than Townsend in all areas. With that said, Townsend is going to have a 5-inch reach advantage in this fight. And prior to his UFC tenure, he was knocking people out. That's what he did. So he does propose that knockout threat. But as we can see from the odds available, they're favoring the newcomer quite heavily, which is not a common thing in debuting fighters. There's a reason for that. Dusko is a talented dude. I've been watching the tape on this guy, and his striking, he's vicious. He's a great striker. He's got the speed, his movement. His striking is versatile. He's not just going to throw a jab and a hook. We're going to see all sorts of kicks and punches. He holds the advantages in all areas, in my opinion, other than maybe, as I mentioned, strength and power. Teddy Ash, he was a tough outing for Dusko. Not many people know Teddy Ash, but it was an evenly matched fight on Dana White Contender Series, and it was the first time that somebody had took Dusko to a decision. And he proved his worth, in my opinion, because if you ask me, I think Teddy Ash would put work in on Dequan Townsend. So it just doesn't make sense for me to fade the newcomer in this position. Dequan, I can't put my money behind a guy who doubts himself. He went on record to say that he's shocked that he's still in the UFC, and he feels like he doesn't deserve to be in the UFC. And as I mentioned, pre-COVID, he wouldn't even be hired right now. So I'm going to have to go with Dusko in this one. The odds, obviously, it wouldn't be wise to pay up 3 units to get 1 unit back on Dusko. So look for a parlay piece, or if you think he's going to get right back on track, he's a finisher. TKO. He's better in striking, in my opinion, but he's still got that grappling there. I think he's got 3 submissions on his record. It's all Dusko for me in this one. But as mentioned, in terms of betting and odds, it's not the type of fight that you want to rush into and just say, yeah, I love Dusko, because for as much as I've praised Dusko, he still is unproven in the UFC. So it's a parlay piece or a prop. If you want to take him inside the distance to get a better number, I wouldn't be mad at that.
All right. Well, how about you, Matt? Do you agree with Dave, or do you have a different take for this fight?
I do not have a different take on this fight, and here's the reason why. When you're doing research on Todorovic, you will look through his win-loss record. You'll see he's 9-0. He's finished 5 of his opponents, taken 3 by submission. Only 1 fight has gone way of decision. But when you look at who he's fought heading into the UFC, one of them is Michel Pereira, and he got a TKO win over him. So when you're looking at levels of competition, and Dequan Townsend has only had 3 fights in the UFC. He's lost all 3 of them, 2 by decision and 1 by TKO. This is his 3rd fight of the year. So he's fought in January, fought in February. He's not fought in what is now known the COVID conditions, the Backstreet Boys reunion tour for my Game Grumps fans. And yeah, he could be cut with a loss here. I'm surprised this is on the card. I'm surprised this is on the main card. But yet again, it's Yas Island. There are no rules on Yas Island, so you have no idea what's going to happen. I heard they were going to try to replace one of the fights with a mascot fight, but they couldn't get gritty in time. It was a whole to-do, something about cutting weight. But this fight, as Dave said, parlay piece. It's a stay away from me straight up. It's not worth it. There's some fights on this card with some bite, much like Gritty at 3 o'clock in the morning outside Tony Luke's. But right now, for me, this fight's not doing it.
All right. Well, if you guys want to get in on that fight, again, via Bet Online, Todorovic is -310 and Townsend is +260. Now, let's move on to the next fight. And I will say this women's bantamweight.
Hey! Well done, bravo!
We have Germaine de Randamie at -135 and Julianna Peña at +115. Matt, I'm going to start with you this time. Can you give us your breakdown and pick for that fight?
This one is a tough fight to pick because these are 2 fighters at crossroads in their career. Germaine de Randamie, we last saw her get pieced up by Amanda Nunes back at UFC 245 in a fight that de Randamie thought she won, but there was no way she won that fight. Anybody who watched that fight knew that Amanda Nunes was basically playing all 5 rounds just because, she had time to kill. The Palms buffet opened. But that ended a 5-fight winning streak for de Randamie that saw Holly Holm, Rocky Pennington, and Aspen Ladd get pieced up. She's the first ever women's featherweight champion. Why she's no longer the women's featherweight champion, you got to talk to Chris Seiberg over at the Viacom building about that. But de Randamie's record is strong. You have a former world champion, someone who has defeated a former world champion and faced quality opponents inside the octagon. But Peña is not, she's not a schlub. She was back in July. She defeated Nico Montano by decision. But before that, she had a 2-year break where she had her first child. And this was preceded by a loss to Valentina Shevchenko. July of last year, she fought Montano. And she's got wins over Kat Zingano and Jessica Ai, so she's faced top-level competitors before, but no one to this level and walking out the other side with a victory. Peña is someone who can be considered an up-and-down fighter in terms of just taking the 2 years off, trying to come back to action, defeating Nico Montano, which is a win, but not a quality win in comparison to Aspen Ladd or Rocky Pennington. I like de Randamie in this fight just based off of looking at things on paper. Once they enter the cage, and Dave can give a little bit more of a breakdown on that. These fighters seem very similar to me in the way their careers broke down. Same amount of fights. de Randamie's 9-4, Peña's 10-3. Both have gotten the majority of their wins by decision, even though Peña's gotten 3 wins by submission and a few by KO and TKO. But decision has these 2 go the distance. This is going to probably go 15 minutes, and it's probably going to frustrate a lot of people because we may not see a lot of real activity until the last few seconds of each round or the last 2 minutes of round number 3 so they could try to steal the victory.
All right, well, Dave, I must tell you, so a couple days ago when I was looking at the odds for this fight, de Randamie was -109 and Peña was -111. Now, kind of opposite. Peña is +115 in the plus. Now, de Randamie is -135. Dave, can you give us your breakdown and pick for that fight?
Yeah, these people they're mind reading your boy. Cause look, it's all GDR for me. It's all GDR right here. The ground game of Peña is undeniable. She's got a dangerous submission threat. And to be fair, I'll even go as far as saying when it comes to strictly jiu-jitsu, she is as good or equal to Amanda Nunes. So for me, that's plus points. That's brownie points for GDR. She survived the onslaught from Nunes on the ground. She went the full 25 with Nunes. And, to be fair, she had her moments against the GOAT of female fighting. My problem with Peña is, as Matt said, they do have a similar record in terms of fights won and lost, but she's been in the UFC for a long time and she has some good wins on her record. The problem has been her activity across the past 4 or 5 years, right? So Matt mentioned she's had a baby, and you can't discredit anyone for wanting to be a good mom and a good mother and taking time away from fighting in the cage. The problem with that is you have females like GDR who are in that gym every single day aiming to take the heads off of anyone and everyone. And when it comes to physical advantages, Peña usually has, she's a strong girl. She can, handle these women with her strength in the octagon. I just don't see that happening with GDR. All the physical advantages for me side with GDR. And if she avoids the ground game this weekend, I have no doubt that this is her fight to lose. Plain and simple. She is the best kickboxer in the UFC from the women's divisions. And she's light years ahead of Peña on the feet. Now, I think she's got enough on the ground to handle what Peña could potentially put on her. But I also believe we might not even see that play out at all. I think GDR could push her away off the clinch, defend the takedowns, defend singles, defend the doubles, and keep it standing. And if she keeps it standing, we could see Peña get knocked out. And that's plain and simple, because when you look at the two girls striking and their prowess and just the accolades and achievements that they've had in that area, Peña doesn't touch GDR. It's not even close. Now I look at the price and I feel like it's a gift. I seriously cap Germaine between 160 and minus 200. And that's the truth. So these odds for me are a gift. The former champion GDR, I know she didn't get the title like a lot of champions do, and it wasn't legitimized as much, but she still held it. She's still there. She's still fought some of the best women in the world. And to be fair, Peña's defeated Nico Montano, and that's all she's done of recent, really. The loss to Shevchenko a few years back. Can't take much from that. She tapped out in the second round. And then before that, impressive win over Zingano, but this was 4 years ago. And she's not finishing these girls. Do I think for her to win this fight, she needs to come out and lock in a submission. That's what she needs to do to win this fight, in my opinion. And I don't see that happening, especially across 25 minutes. I'm not even sure. I know Peña's she's fought a good level of competition, but I don't think she's ever been in a 5-round fight. It's all GDR for me. And sorry, this isn't a 5-round fight; it's a 3-round fight because it's a co-main event. So I'll take that back. Either way, 15 minutes across the 15 minutes. My opinion still stays the same. Actually, GDR. It's all GDR for me. Striking, just gonna outstrike her or knock her out. And that's it. And it could be in the first round as well if Peña can't get a takedown or some form of grappling to just keep that kickboxing away. It's just going to be too much for her. Yeah, but and yes, I am betting it straight, and I am betting it in a parlay. I'm double backing GDR this week because I see value in her. It's all about the number, and that number is that's a great number in my opinion. What's it sat now? 130, 140.
135.
Yeah, and that's came down from the opener, right? So people are coming in on Julianna Peña because they're looking at her record. They're seeing that she only has one loss to the beast, that is Valentina Shevchenko. But they're clearly not taking everything else into consideration. They're forgetting who Peña's fighting. Just an incredible kickboxer in Germaine. So yeah, it's all GDR for me, and I'm betting that one.
No, yeah, I'm definitely with you on that one, Dave. But I'm looking in the comments. Johnny Z says the Venezuelan Vixen is my pick, so we'll see what happens.
Each to their own, my friend. Each to their own.
Yeah. Now let's move on to the next fight. We have heavyweight Yorgan and Castro versus Carlos Felipe via Bet Online. Felipe is plus 220, and Castro is -260. Dave, I'm going to continue with you if you can give us your breakdown and pick for that fight.
Good. I'm glad you're continuing straight at me because I was already getting angry as you were announcing that this fight was so high up on the card. And this is how crazy it is. I just made two mistakes. I just said that GDR's fighting a 5-round fight and she's in the co-main event. And I got both of them wrong. Do you know why I got the second thing wrong? I got that wrong because I'm still in disbelief that Yorgan de Castro and Carlos Felipe, two guys that have, 15 fights between both of them are at the top of this card. I'm not happy. Yeah, we got the big boys. There's a great potential of a knockout. There's just nothing to take from this fight, honestly. I'm not gonna bet it. I haven't even looked at the lines much. Yorgan de Castro finally is gonna fight somebody who's actually smaller than them, because both of these heavyweights could be light heavyweights, they could be middleweights. They don't want to take that dietary route. Fair play to them, why not? 6'1", Yorgan de Castro. He's going to have the speed advantage. That's what you always see in Yorgan's fights, the speed. And that's the good thing about being a heavyweight who's slightly smaller, because, you're more agile. But that's no good when you're trying to hit a 6'5", 280-pound monster who can drop you with one punch. Castro, he's got nice striking, comes from a Muay Thai background, as far as I remember. Great footwork and great defensive movement, which is why you will not see a knockout loss on his record. Unfortunately for him, he came up against the guy in Greg Hardy, as I was just saying. When you come against these 6'5" absolute walls of men, it's not gonna go down too well, and it didn't for him. No, he didn't get knocked out, but he couldn't overcome the size disadvantage that he was going through. But as I mentioned, it's a rare occasion for De Castro when he's going to have a reach and height advantage, because the guy that he's facing in Carlos Felipe is 6 foot and is even smaller than he is. It looks like a middleweight light heavy. Well, it looks like a light heavyweight fight to me. Luckily for both men, I guess it's pretty even on size. And there's not much to say about Felipe really, because we haven't saw him fight inside the UFC other than the one loss. The best take I have similar to De Castro is he's not going to be easy to finish. The defensive structure that he's shown against what's his name, Sergey Spivak, was great, because Spivak outclassed him in that fight, but he couldn't finish him. Now Felipe, he looked like a great prospect coming off the regional scene. He did. But, you take your first fight against Sergey, that roadblock's there. I don't think he's going to be able to do well in the UFC heavyweight division. Maybe a rethink to drop down to light heavyweight. But even saying that, look at the top 15 in that division too. It's a rough one for these guys who are broader and smaller in height, because not everyone is Daniel Cormier, who's been to the Olympics and been able to, have such a good background in one martial art. It's a tough one. I think I would probably be interested in the over, because it is a heavyweight fight and both of these guys have such good chins and are durable. Being a heavyweight fight, we always get good odds on the overs, especially the over 1.5s. I don't know what the odds are right now, but if you really want to bet this fight, the value is probably going to be in that over. With that said, both guys have got knockout power and serious, anything can happen. So all in all, it's a stay away fight for me in terms of betting. But I think Yorgan de Castro will win. I do favour him to win. And I want to say by decision, but whenever I say decision in heavyweight fights, it gives me high anxiety. So it's a stay away. It's a stay away for me. But yeah, Yorgan de Castro and probably the over. If you force it.
Yeah, you mentioned the over 1.5 at BetOnline is -115. So.
Gee, there we go. That is absolute value. You will not find that in another weight class. You're not going to find them odds. You're not going to see that. It's not going to happen unless it's two absolute monsters that have, 13 finishes and 13 fights each. So you're not going to see them odds. So that's value to me, because 1.5 rounds is 7 minutes. And with the defensive skills of both these guys and the durability that they've shown, that's value.
All right. Well, how about you, Matt? Do you have a different take on that fight, or do you agree with Dave?
So I was doing my research on this fight this morning, and yeah, I was confused why this fight's the co-main event on this card. But when you look at the data, I want to talk about that over 1.5. When you talk about the fight going into the second round and into the third round or going to a decision, Yorgan de Castro's only loss has come by way of decision. For Carlos Felipe, 3 of his 9 fights have gone to decision. Both of these guys have over 12 finishes in less than 20 fights between them. That is an insane stat. And another insane stat for Felipe, when you talk about that over. All of his fights that have gone past round 1 have gone to a decision. He's never gotten a finish or been finished in the second round. So this fight exists in only the first round and the third round, especially if you're putting something on this fight. If you're looking at this fight, seriously trying to put it into a parlay piece or just betting it straight up, De Castro's the favorite. He fought higher levels of competition in the UFC against a guy who got kicked out of the NFL. And Sergey Spivak, I'm not going to cast any aspersions on his character or record, or at least him as a fighter. But when you look at the level and size of competitors, when you look at Greg Hardy and you look at Sergey Spivak, there is a noticeable level of difference between the two. And that stat for Felipe shows that he's a fighter. He's someone that wants to finish it early, or he's going to be someone who sticks out to the end and try to steal or walk away with the victory. It's De Castro with me, and I think this fight is either ending in round 1 or round 3. Round 2 is going to be a round where you can just go get a bagel or something.
All right. Well, there you guys have it. If you want to get in on that fight, again, via Bet Online, Yorgan de Castro is minus 260 and Carlos Felipe is plus 220. Now let's move on to the main event. We have Holly Holm versus, they pop up on my computer. Holly Holm versus Irene Aldana. Via Bet Online, Holly Holm is minus 115 and Aldana is minus 105. Matt, I'm going to continue with you. If you can give us your breakdown and pick for the main event.
Holly Holm is a UFC Hall of Famer. She ended the legacy of Ronda Rousey. And you look at the level of competition she's faced since then. Valentina Shevchenko, Germaine de Randamie, Chris Cyborg, Amanda Nunes. Also, top flight competitors, some of the greatest female fighters of all time, all of them champions. All of them, I think with the and Miesha Tate. But all of those are losses. And I think all but one of them are title fights. So in the spotlight, if the Rousey fight doesn't happen, or if that knockout doesn't happen, do we even have Holly Holm on the UFC roster? And this is not an indictment on Holly Holm. She would probably be the star in Bellator, the star in the PFL, because of how talented she is. But if you're looking at a butterfly effect here, and you've seen her stay in one spot as a mixed martial artist. And we've seen fighters that are more multifaceted, the Cyborgs, the Nuneses, Shevchenko, de Randamie, all be able to bring her down, all defeat her, whether by knockout, submission, or decision. The longer this fight goes, the worse it is for Holly Holm, because the majority of her fights have been by way of majority of her losses, are by way of decision. And then you look at Irene Aldana. Her last loss was in July of last year against Rocky Pennington. Yet again, not an easy win or an easy loss for either fighter. And she's got a two-win fight streak over Caitlin Vieira and Vanessa Mello going back into last December. And she's had a problem leveling up. She has had sufficient problems in leveling up with losses to Rocky Pennington, Caitlin Chukagi, and Tanya Evinger and Leslie Smith, all but Smith, former world title challengers, have faced the people that Holly Holm has faced and has lost. So for me, Holly Holm will probably win this fight predicated on her resume and the ability of fighting in 5-round fights in the past and being someone who knows how to survive for 5 rounds. But Aldana can get her. 6 wins by knockout, 3 wins by the submission. Submission is the major game here. If Holm gets taken to the ground, this fight is over. I think if Aldana can get this fight to the ground, try to find an opening, try to take the arm, try to take the back, Aldana gets the victory. But if Aldana wants to spar and wants to stand up, Holly Holm gets the win. This is a tough fight. This is a very tough fight.
I don't know, something in my gut's telling me Holly Holm because she is one tough cookie. But how about you, Dave? What's your breakdown and pick for the main event?
The preacher's daughter, eh? Look, it's got to be an over anyway, like, because the over automatically with Holly Holm. Yeah, it's an over. And I gave that on my first look article. I've got a bit of a different take. If you did read my first look article on SBR's website, you might hear a couple of different things here from what I mentioned before. But, you know, I write these articles a week in advance and opinions change. Holly Holm, look, she's got we saw her power when she dethroned the Queen, Ronda. But my problem with Holly is her effortless punching and her, you know, I'm just going to tap someone. Rather than she's never headhunting. I don't feel like she ever wants to get a finish. A lot of screaming and yelling while she's doing these strikes, but there's just not much behind them. In a previous fight that she had against Raquel Pennington, in my opinion, was an embarrassment for Holly Holm. I expected way more than from her in that fight. It seemed like she was scared and hesitant of getting into too much of a striking exchange with Raquel. And I don't know why, because she's really good at it, especially when Raquel was just giving her the lead leg the entire fight. I was watching Holly and she did tap that lead leg a couple of times, but Raquel is a boxer, okay? And she's going to be relying on that lead leg to generate her power. And that can be taken away with someone that has the kicking skills of Holly, and she just didn't utilize it as much as I thought she could, and I was surprised that her coaches didn't advise her on that either. Now, holding somebody against the cage with minimal damage and significant strikes, to me, that is just giving me the impression that you are scared of striking with this girl. Holly Holm is easily readable. Not to discredit her, because easily readable is fine if you're really good in that one area, and Holly is. She's got the lead right uppercut with a straight left. She does it every fight. She's done it every single fight she's had, and it works. The problem is that's not going to last forever, and Holly's been dropping these same combinations now for a very long time. When the combos don't work, we'll see a bit of clinch work, and then, you know, she's got the side kicks, a few low kicks, and as mentioned, she does chop at that lead leg. She didn't against Raquel, but she has done in the past, and, you know, that's Holly Holm's offense in under 20 words. Is Aldana going to be able to read that, progress through the fight and come on and use some sort of fight IQ to overcome that? I don't think so, because when you go and watch Irene Aldana versus Raquel Pennington, I mean, she gets outclassed, really. I'll tell you something, right? So Aldana, she's big, strong girl, and she's a natural bantamweight that a lot of these girls in the division aren't. But is she stronger than Holly Holm? I don't really know, because when you see Holly in those positions, them clinch positions, she's really strong. And she held Raquel Pennington in position. She held her there, head in the center, right in the center of her chest, not giving her any room to breathe or move. She wasn't doing much in terms of damage, but I mean, it won the fight for her. And it's that type of fighter who I want to put my money behind. I don't care if Holly Holm is coming out here and trying to do spinning back kicks and flying knees and, you know, all this impressive stuff. That doesn't bother me when I'm looking to make money. If I was just a UFC fan and I'm here to watch for the entertainment, yes, boo, stop it, stop clinching, carry on. But we're here to win money, right? And in my opinion, this is a good position for Holly Holm. I'm not one for MMA math, right? But if Pennington struggles with Holm's strength and Aldana struggles with Pennington's strength, making a prediction on who's the stronger fighter here is easy for me. And as Matt mentioned, if Aldana can't get this fight to the floor, she's gonna be stuck with Holly Holm, who's proficient in striking and has, you know, gone toe to toe with some of the best in the world. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to give Irene Aldana any advice for this fight, I'd tell her to slow down. The girl needs to slow down. I mean, movement is great if your cardio can keep up with that. And, you know, you do have to move. You need to move. You can't be a standing target. But the girl is constantly bouncing on her toes like it's like she's cold. I don't understand. It's a waste of energy. She throws, and much like Holly, she throws a lot of pointless strikes. She's the opposite of efficient, and that scares me. In a 5-round fight against, in fact, it is a 5-round fight. I'm just going to double check. Yes, this is a main event. Okay. Yeah, it scares me. A 5-round fight against a former champion. I'm not sure Aldana can do it. And when you go back, you can actually go back and look. Aldana hasn't fought a 5-round fight since 2014. And guess what happened in that fight? She got knocked out in the 4th round. So is that a coincidence? I don't know. I don't think Aldana's ready for 5 rounds with somebody who's a former champion and can breeze through 25 minutes. To her credit, I'm not going to, Aldana, she's looked mean and she's looked great in her recent bouts. But take a closer look at her fight history. Who has she defeated? Nobody. Nobody with a name, nobody with a presence. She hasn't defeated anyone like Holly Holm. So for me, this is going to be an over because I don't think, Aldana's going to get knocked out. I don't think Holly's going to put that on. We could see another boring one. We might not. I don't know. It's just one of them fights. It's hard to really get a gauge on everything. But my heart says Holm's going to win. And I think she's going to do it by decision.
Yeah. All right. When you mentioned the over, right now on BetOnline, we have the over 4.5. That's minus 245.
Ooh, you see, it starts becoming sticky, right? Especially in the women's fights, because we look at the sample size. It is pointing towards the majority of the fights ending in decision. So the bookie is more than aware of that. And look, we have to pay juice. It's what it is. We have to pay juice. There's not enough liquidity in this market. Not that much money goes into it. It's not the NFL. So we just have to deal with some of these horrible lines. But saying that, just go look at the history of Holly Holm and how her fights usually, more often than not, play out, and it's over. So.
All right. Well, there you guys have it for the main event. Via BetOnline, Holly Holm is minus 115 and Irene Aldana is minus 105. Now, before I wrap everything up, I just have a question for the both of you guys, and I will start with Matt. Throughout this entire card, is there a fight that stands out to you? And can you break that down for us?
To me, the fight that's most interesting is the co-main event, the heavyweight fight, because there are so many questions. There are so many things that can happen. Every fight on this card is a question mark to me, because when you look at everything from a broad perspective, as Dave said at the top of the broadcast, if there was not a pandemic going on, if Dana White didn't have to lease an island from the Dubai government to make this happen, we're not seeing most of these cards would be co-main events or on the late prelims right before ESPN goes on the air. These are cards that need to happen due to contractual obligations, and they're trying to make the best of a very bad situation. But the heavyweight fight is interesting to me just because I like heavyweight fights. Growing up in America in the 90s with boxing, you grew up on Tyson, you grew up on Holyfield, you grew up on Bo and Galata, and the Bo Galata, not the greatest fight of all time, but it was entertaining because it was just two dudes beating the nonsense out of one another. And that's what this fight shapes up to be on Saturday night. So if you're just looking for a fight to just enjoy as a popcorn fight, something you can sip a beer over, that's the fight for me. And I think that's probably why it's in the co-main event, because you have two really proficient fights in between it, and they're looking a way to flow the card as best as possible. And with the way that fight is shaping up, it might end in the first round, and we're going to have 45 minutes of commercials anyway. So it may not matter, but that fight to me is the most interesting because of all the little subtleties we talked about before.
All right. Well, how about you, Dave? Throughout this entire card, are there any odds that stand out to you?
There's a whole bunch of odds that stand out to me. I'm not going to lie. I prefer the prelims on this event. Loma Lookboonmee, love it. The fact that the odds on her are so low, I think it's another gift similar into GDR. And then we have another Dagestani debuting, and we know, how well they do in the UFC. Norzadin Imavov is going to fight Jordan Williams, who just fought a couple of weeks ago on Dana White Contender Series, got an impressive knockout. For some reason, the Dagestani's the underdog, and this might be the only chance that you get to hit him at some plus money, because I'm telling you now, he's a beast. He's a beast. I've been doing my research. I got an article on him on SBR's website, so go check that out. But I'm seeing value all over Imavoth, excuse my pronunciation. And what the hell is going on? Why is Carlos Condit not on the main card? I don't care if Carlos Condit has lost 10 fights in a row. It's Carlos Condit. The guy should be on the main card. Which fight got cancelled? So the fight got cancelled, and they've put Kyler Phillips and Cameron House on the main card to replace Tom Breese. Okay, why are you doing that? Put Carlos Condit and Court McGee on. Look, we know they're not going to be future champions. We know they're not going to break the top 10 again, but that doesn't matter. You don't care about this card. At least give the fans something they want. And I know the fans would rather see Carlos Condit and Court McGee as the co-main event over Carlos Felipe and Yorgan de Castro. I don't care. But old school fans anyway. Maybe not the newbies.
You got me with Court McGee and Carlos Condit. You got me.
There you go. And here's another thing. Carlos Condit is on a 5-fight losing streak against absolute killers, right? He is now coming in at Bet Online. You can get him at plus 115. So I mean, that's a no-brainer for me. Carlos Condit's got all the value in the world. But yeah, that's about it. You've got, if Jesus was a Calvin Klein model, you've got Kyler Phillips, who for some reason is priced at minus 400, minus 450. Yeah. Ignore that, right? Because he opened at minus 200 and the public have juiced him to that. And I do not know why. Because yes, he's looked good. Well, that's what I mean. Is everyone betting on the hair? If they're betting on the hair, then fair enough. But that's not how we break down MMA here. That's a stay away fight. Do not bet that huge line because it is a risk. Even in a parlay, I don't think that's worth it. We need to see Kyler Phillips do his thing in the UFC before we can take that ridiculous number. Even his opening line, 450. Even his opening line of minus 200 was a bit disrespectful as well. Because look at Cameron House, he ain't no chump. They're lining this fight up, and the odds are lined up like Cameron House is going to get starched in the first minute. Just don't see that happening. So yeah, that's a stay away from me. But overall, if you're looking for some more bets and tips, and just head on over to the website and check out all of our articles.
Yep, there you go. And if you want to check out all the odds about the fights that Dave just talked about, you can go to BetOnline, or if you want to shop around, you can go to sbrodds.com. And if you want more breakdowns and picks for UFC from all of SBR's UFC experts, you can go to sbrpicks.com/UFC. And yes, you will find Dave's articles there as well. And also, if you aren't following the guys on Twitter, definitely give the guys a follow. You can follow Dave at _Manyun and Matt at MRyan Consulting. It's a good idea to follow them. They're always updating their Twitter feed. That way, if you want to stay up to date with their picks for the fight, follow them on Twitter. Also, give SBR a follow on Twitter at Instagram at SBR Sports Picks. And that's all I have for you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, dropping your knowledge like always. It truly is a pleasure, and best of luck to everyone this weekend. I'll see you next week.
Bye.